Michael was a quiet kid, even for a 10-year-old growing up in the small, dusty town of Harmony Creek. He wasn't the kind to cause trouble, or even to stand out much. Most days, he just floated through school, his head down, his backpack a little too big for his skinny frame. But there was one thing that did make him stand out. A mark that seemed to follow him around like a shadow. A black eye. It wasn't always there, but it showed up often enough. Sometimes a purplish bruise, other times a fading yellow. He rarely spoke about it, and most adults, after a quick, uncomfortable glance, would look away. Michael had learned early on that silence was often the easiest path. Harmony Creek wasn't the kind of place that saw a lot of excitement. So when the news broke that the WWE was bringing a live event, a fan meet and greet, to the old community center, the town buzzed like a disturbed beehive. Kids talked about it for weeks, saving up their allowances for tickets, practicing their favorite wrestlers' catchphrases. Michael heard the chatter, of course. He even liked wrestling, secretly. He'd sneak peeks when his neighbor's TV was on, watching the larger-than-life figures, their strength, their confidence. But going to an event? That felt like something for other kids, kids whose lives were a little brighter, a little less complicated. He usually found a way to be busy during town events, hiding in plain sight, but this time, fate, or maybe just a lucky break, had other plans. His neighbor, old Mr. Henderson, who knew Michael liked the wrestling shows, had an extra ticket. He insisted Michael go, saying it would do him good to see some real action. Michael mumbled his thanks, feeling a familiar knot in his stomach. He went, though, because it was harder to refuse Mr. Henderson than to face the crowd. The community center was packed, a cacophony of cheers and music. Lights flashed, and the air thrummed with energy. Michael found himself swept along, almost swallowed by the noise and the sheer number of people. He was trying to slip away, maybe find a quiet corner, when a surge in the crowd pushed him forward, right towards the meet-and-greet line. Before he knew it, he was just a few feet from the table, where the biggest star of them all, John Cena, was signing autographs. Cena was even bigger in person, a mountain of muscle, and a smile that seemed to light up the room. He was laughing, chatting with fans, his pen moving quickly. Michael felt a strange mix of fear and awe. He wanted to turn and run, but the crowd behind him was too dense. He was next. He shuffled forward, his heart pounding. Cena looked up, his smile unwavering. "Hey there, buddy. What's your name?" he boomed, his voice kind. Michael just stared, his throat suddenly dry. He felt the familiar throb above his left eye, a fresh bruise blooming from an incident the night before. He hadn't even tried to cover it today. He just stood there, a small, bruised boy looking up at a giant. And then, without thinking, the words, a raw, desperate whisper, tumbled out. "Please," Michael breathed, his voice barely audible over the crowd. "Please, be my dad." The smile on Cena's face faltered. The easygoing banter stopped. The pen paused midair. For a split second, the noise of the crowd seemed to fade, and all Michael could hear was his own ragged breathing. Cena's blue eyes, which had been so bright and jovial, softened, a flicker of something deep and understanding passing through them. He didn't laugh. He didn't dismiss it as a childish fantasy. He just stared at Michael, really seeing him. The black eye, the worn clothes, the desperate hope in his gaze. Cena leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping so only Michael could hear it over the din. "Hey, buddy," he said, his tone gentle, almost solemn. "That's a big ask, but I heard you. I really did." He reached for a signed photo, a quick, smooth movement. "Tell you what, I'm going to sign this for you. And on the back, there's a number. It's not my number, but it's for someone who works with me. You call that number, okay? You tell them you met John Cena, and you tell them what you just told me. Don't tell anyone else. Just them. Can you do that for me?" Michael nodded, speechless, his hand trembling as he took the photo. He clutched it to his chest, feeling the smooth, glossy paper against his fingers. Cena gave him a quick, reassuring squeeze on the shoulder, a touch that felt incredibly solid. "You're not alone, kid. Not anymore. I promise." As the crowd finally pushed Michael past the table, he didn't look back. He just kept walking, the signed photo held tight, the noise of the community center, the cheers, the music. It all seemed distant now. All he could focus on was the small, almost invisible number written on the back of the photo, and Cena's words. "You're not alone. I promise." For the first time in a very long time, Michael felt a tiny, fragile spark of hope flicker inside him. It was a strange feeling, unfamiliar, but he held on to it, clutching the photo like it was the most precious thing in the world. He knew he had to make that call. He had to. Michael left the community center, the signed photo with the mysterious number clutched tightly in his hand. He walked home in a daze, the earlier chaos of the wrestling event a blur. All he could think about was John Cena's face, the serious look in his eyes, and the quiet promise. When he got to his small, run-down house, he slipped inside, trying to be as quiet as possible. His mother was usually gone, working one of her 2 jobs, but sometimes his stepfather, Rick, was home. Today, the house was empty, filled with the familiar smell of stale cigarettes and something vaguely metallic. He went straight to his room, a cramped space with peeling wallpaper and a window that didn't quite close. He pulled out the photo again, carefully turning it over. The number was written in neat, small script. He stared at it for a long time, his heart doing a nervous flutter. This wasn't just a fan club number. He felt it. Cena had been too serious. He found an old, cheap cell phone his mother used to have, tucked away in a drawer. It barely worked, but he managed to charge it. With shaking fingers, he dialed the number. A woman's voice, calm and professional, answered on the 3rd ring. Michael mumbled his name, then, remembering Cena's instructions, said, "I met John Cena. He told me to call you. He said I should tell you what I told him." He paused, a lump forming in his throat. "I asked him to be my dad." There was a brief silence on the other end, but it wasn't a shocked or dismissive silence. It was a listening silence. The woman asked a few gentle questions. His age, where he lived, how he knew Cena. Michael answered as best he could, his voice small but steady. He ended the call feeling a strange mix of relief and fear. He had done it. Now what? Meanwhile, John Cena, back in his hotel room after the event, was already making calls. The woman Michael spoke to was his personal assistant, Sarah, a sharp, discreet individual who had worked with him for years. Her call had come minutes after Michael hung up. Cena listened intently as Sarah recounted Michael's call, her voice mirroring his own concern. He had seen enough troubled kids in his life, enough desperation in their eyes, to know that Michael's plea wasn't just a child's fantasy. It was a cry for help, raw and real. Cena immediately tasked Sarah with looking into Michael's situation, but with extreme caution. He didn't want to draw any attention that might put the boy in more danger. Sarah, with her network of contacts, started discreetly digging. She checked public records, looked into school district information, and even managed to get in touch with local social services, all without raising any flags about a celebrity involvement. The information started to trickle in, painting a grim picture. Michael lived in a low-income area. His mother worked long hours, often leaving him unsupervised. His stepfather, Rick, had a history of minor offenses, mostly related to public disturbance and alcohol. There were no official reports of abuse against Michael, which wasn't surprising. These things often went unreported, hidden behind closed doors. But the fact that Michael had a black eye when he met Cena, and the quiet desperation in his voice, spoke volumes. It wasn't hard to connect the dots. The home environment was clearly unstable, lacking the basic emotional and physical security a child needed. There were hints of neglect, not just physical, but emotional. A child begging a stranger to be his father usually meant there was no father figure, or at least, no positive one, in his life. Sarah then turned her attention to Michael's school. She found out he attended Northwood Elementary. A quick, subtle inquiry revealed that Michael was a quiet student, often withdrawn. His grades were slipping, and he frequently missed days. Teachers had noted a change in his behavior over the last year, a growing sadness. One teacher, Mrs. Jenkins, a seasoned educator known for her sharp observations and caring nature, had even tried to reach out to Michael's mother several times, but the calls often went unanswered or were met with vague excuses. Mrs. Jenkins had expressed concern to the school counselor about Michael's frequent bruises and isolation, but without concrete evidence or a direct confession from Michael, their hands were tied. They could only offer support within the school's limited resources. As Cena received these reports from Sarah, his concern deepened. What started as an empathetic reaction to a child's plea was quickly turning into a profound sense of responsibility. He realized Michael's "be my dad" wasn't just a simple request for a parental figure. It was a desperate cry for safety, for stability, for love, and for someone to protect him from whatever he was enduring. The severity of the situation became clear. This wasn't a matter of just sending some toys or a positive message. This was a child in a potentially dangerous situation, caught in a cycle he couldn't escape on his own. Cena paced his hotel room, the reports spread out on the table. He knew he couldn't just step in and become Michael's legal guardian, nor was that truly what Michael was asking. Michael needed a support system, a community, a clear message that he was seen and that he mattered. Cena understood the power of a single moment, a turning point that could change a life. He thought about his own childhood, the positive influences that had shaped him. He had a platform, a voice, and a network of people who also understood what it meant to be a hero, both in and out of the ring. He couldn't just stand by. He had to do something impactful, something that would resonate with Michael and show him that he truly wasn't alone. A plan began to form in his mind, a bold, unprecedented idea that would require the help of many. It was risky, complicated, but potentially life-changing. He picked up his phone, the decision made. He knew exactly who to call first. Cena picked up his phone, the decision made. He knew exactly who to call first. He dialed a number he knew by heart, a direct line to one of the most respected figures in the wrestling world, a man known not just for his in-ring prowess, but for his quiet generosity and sharp mind. The phone rang twice before a gruff but familiar voice answered. "Hey, it's Cena," he began, skipping the pleasantries. "I need to talk to you about something important, something beyond wrestling." He then launched into Michael's story, starting from the moment the boy looked up at him with that black eye, whispering, "Be my dad." He detailed Sarah's findings, the troubled home life, the concerned teacher, and the general helplessness surrounding Michael's situation. He spoke with a controlled passion, his voice low but firm, conveying the gravity of the situation without over-dramatizing it. He didn't ask for much, just for the man on the other end to listen, to understand the weight of Michael's plea. The response was thoughtful, a few moments of silence broken by a sigh. "That's heavy, John," the voice finally said. "What are you thinking?" Cena laid out his nascent plan. He explained that Michael needed more than just one person's help. He needed a show of force, a clear message that a whole community stood behind him. He needed to know he had a voice, that he was visible. And who better to deliver that message than a collective of larger-than-life heroes, people who, despite their stage personas, genuinely cared? He outlined the idea of a surprise visit to Michael's school, a public display of support that would leave no doubt in Michael's mind that he was not alone. "It's risky," Cena admitted. "Logistically, it's a nightmare. And we'd have to be careful not to make it a spectacle that hurts him more than helps. But I think it's the only way to truly cut through the noise of his life and show him he's got people in his corner." The veteran wrestler listened, interjecting with a few questions about the details of Michael's situation, the school's involvement, and the potential pitfalls. He wasn't just agreeing, he was analyzing, planning, already thinking several steps ahead. By the end of the call, he was on board. "Count me in, John. And I know a few others who would want to be part of this. Let me make some calls." This was the first domino. Cena then reached out to a select few other trusted superstars, people he knew had big hearts behind their tough exteriors. He chose individuals who were not only popular, but also known for their genuine connection with fans, especially kids. Some were immediately enthusiastic, their empathy kicking in as soon as they heard Michael's story. Others, initially, were more cautious. They understood the power of their presence, but also the potential for things to go wrong, for the situation to be misconstrued, or for Michael to be overwhelmed. One wrestler, a formidable figure in the ring, expressed concern. "John, are we sure this is the right move? We're not social workers. We're entertainers. What if we mess this up?" Cena met their skepticism with calm conviction. He didn't dismiss their concerns. Instead, he appealed to their shared humanity, their understanding of what it felt like to be underestimated, to have to fight for what you believed in. He reminded them of the countless times they had met children who looked up to them, who saw them as symbols of strength and hope. "This isn't about being social workers," Cena explained. "It's about being human. It's about showing a kid who's been told he doesn't matter that he absolutely does. It's about giving him a moment, a memory, that can stand against all the bad stuff he's been through. We have a platform, a unique one. We can use it for something truly good here." He emphasized the careful planning that would be involved, the discretion, the focus on Michael's well-being above all else. He painted a picture of Michael's face, the desperation in his eyes, the simple, heartbreaking plea. He talked about the responsibility that came with their fame, the chance to be real-life heroes, not just characters on TV. As the calls continued, the idea began to gain real momentum. The initial handful of trusted superstars started reaching out to their own networks. The wrestling community, often seen as a collection of individual competitors, showed its true colors as a tight-knit family when one of their own called for help, especially for a child. Word spread quickly, not through official channels, but through hushed phone calls and private messages. Wrestlers, both active and retired, began to volunteer. Many had similar stories, tales of struggling kids they had met, moments that had stuck with them. This was an opportunity to do something significant, concrete. The plan began to take a more defined shape. The idea of a collective public show of support for Michael at his school solidified. It had to be a surprise, impactful, and undeniable. But the logistical challenges were immense. Coordinating the schedules of 20 high-profile individuals, many of whom were constantly on the road, was a monumental task. They would need to travel, often from different parts of the country, all converging on a small town in the United States without drawing undue attention. Then there was the school itself. How would they convince a school administration to allow such an unprecedented event? Security would be a major concern, as would managing the emotional impact on Michael and the rest of the student body. They needed to ensure the visit was a positive, empowering experience, not a chaotic media circus. It required a delicate touch, careful negotiation, and absolute secrecy. Despite the hurdles, the commitment to Michael grew stronger with each wrestler who joined the cause. The shared purpose created a powerful bond, a quiet determination to make this happen for the boy who had asked a WWE superstar to be his dad. What started as Cena's personal mission was quickly becoming a collective endeavor, a testament to the unexpected compassion found within the world of professional wrestling. The stage was being set, quietly and meticulously, for a day that would change Michael's life forever. The network of champions was assembling, ready to stand together for a child who felt utterly alone. The next critical step involved approaching Michael's school. Cena's team, understanding the need for discretion and a professional front, chose a subtle intermediary. This person was a trusted community liaison, someone with experience navigating sensitive situations and who could present the request to the school administration in a way that highlighted the positive intentions rather than the potential disruption. They knew a direct approach from a celebrity's publicist might raise too many red flags. The liaison made contact with the principal, Dr. Evans, a woman known for her strict adherence to protocol and her dedication to student welfare. The initial conversation was cautious. The liaison explained in broad terms that a group of prominent public figures wished to visit the school to offer support to a specific student who was experiencing a difficult time. They deliberately omitted the names of the WWE superstars at first, focusing instead on the potential for a powerful, positive intervention. Dr. Evans listened intently, her expression unreadable. Her primary concerns immediately surfaced. Security. A visit from prominent public figures could mean anything from local politicians to movie stars, and either way, it spelled potential chaos. There was also the issue of disruption to the academic environment, the precedent it might set, and, most importantly, the privacy and well-being of the student in question. She voiced her worries about turning a sensitive situation into a spectacle. She wanted to know how this event would genuinely benefit the student, whose identity was still being kept confidential. Cena's team, through their liaison, reassured Dr. Evans that the event would be handled with the utmost care. They emphasized that the focus was entirely on Michael's well-being, not on publicity. They clarified that the visitors were not seeking media attention, nor would they be accompanied by camera crews. The goal was to provide a personal, impactful show of solidarity. They stressed that the entire operation would be designed to minimize disruption, with a clear plan for managing student excitement and ensuring safety. The liaison carefully explained that the individuals involved understood the gravity of Michael's situation and were committed to a respectful, meaningful engagement. At this point, Michael's concerned teacher, Mrs. Davison, stepped forward. She had been observing Michael for months, seeing the quiet pain in his eyes, the way he flinched at loud noises, and the recurring injuries he tried to hide. She had tried to help him within the school's resources, offering extra support, connecting him with the school counselor. But she felt limited. When she learned about the potential visit and the general outline of its purpose, she immediately saw its potential. She approached Dr. Evans privately, advocating passionately for the visit. Mrs. Davison explained Michael's struggles in detail, highlighting his isolation, his withdrawn nature, and the deep emotional scars she suspected he carried. She argued that a gesture of this magnitude, from people Michael admired, could be the turning point he desperately needed. She believed it could show him that he was seen, that he mattered, and that there were powerful, caring adults who believed in him. Dr. Evans was swayed by Mrs. Davison's heartfelt plea and the careful planning presented by Sina's team. She recognized that while unconventional, this might be exactly what Michael needed. After careful consideration and a series of detailed discussions about logistics, security, and student privacy, she reluctantly granted approval for the visit. However, she set strict guidelines. The visit would be brief, contained, and focused entirely on Michael. There would be no public announcements beforehand, no media involvement, and the wrestlers would need to adhere to all school rules and security protocols. The goal was an assembly, disguised as a regular school event, where the reveal would happen. With the school's approval secured, the planning entered its final, most intense phase. Sina's team and the school administration worked together in secret. They coordinated arrival times, entry points, and the flow of the assembly. The school's gymnasium was chosen as the venue, allowing for a controlled environment. The principal and a few trusted staff members were the only ones aware of the full scope of the event. Even the teachers, with the exception of Mrs. Davison, were kept in the dark about the identity of the special guests, only being told to prepare their students for an important assembly focused on community values. The secrecy was paramount. The biggest challenge was keeping it from Michael himself. The entire point was for this to be a genuine, overwhelming surprise, a moment of pure, unadulterated hope. The anticipation among the small group of planners was immense. Each logistical hurdle overcome, each whispered confirmation from a wrestler committing to be there, built the excitement. They knew this wasn't just a school visit. It was an intervention, a carefully orchestrated act of kindness designed to lift a child out of the shadows. The stage was now set for an extraordinary day, a day that everyone hoped would change Michael's life forever. The school staff and Sina's team held onto the secret, anticipating the profound impact it would have on Michael, a quiet boy who had dared to ask a champion to be his dad. The morning of the big day started like any other for Michael. He woke up early, the worn springs of his mattress creaking under his small weight. The house was quiet, the way it usually was, with only the distant sounds of the city starting to stir. He ate a quick, solitary breakfast, staring blankly at the chipped paint on the kitchen wall. His backpack, already packed with the few books and notebooks he owned, sat by the door. He still felt the familiar ache of a bruise on his arm from a recent, forgotten incident, but he didn't dwell on it. Michael just put on his slightly too big jacket, pulled his hood up, and walked the familiar route to school. He was completely unaware of the life-changing event about to unfold, carrying the usual weight of his struggles and the quiet resignation that had become his constant companion. To him, it was just another Tuesday, another day to get through. Meanwhile, a different kind of morning was unfolding across town. Long before the first school bell, a fleet of unmarked SUVs and minivans began to arrive at a prearranged, discreet location near the school. Inside them were the WWE superstars, dressed in casual clothes, hoodies, jeans, baseball caps, looking more like a group of ordinary folks than world-famous athletes. There were 20 of them, a sea of champions, each one having made the journey from different parts of the country, some even flying in from overseas, all for Michael. They gathered in a rented community center, going over the final details with Cena's team. The atmosphere was serious, yet charged with a quiet determination. They weren't here for applause or autographs. They were here to make a difference in one boy's life. Back at the school, the assembly was announced over the intercom, a seemingly routine event scheduled for the gymnasium. The students, including Michael, shuffled in, grumbling slightly about missing class. The atmosphere was normal, a buzz of chatter and restless energy filling the large room. Teachers stood along the walls, trying to maintain order. Michael found a seat near the back, his eyes scanning the crowd, always looking for a quiet corner. He kept his head down, hoping to blend in, to become invisible as he usually did. He still thought it was just another boring school assembly, probably about fire safety or good attendance. Then the principal, Dr. Evans, stepped onto the stage. She adjusted the microphone, her voice echoing slightly. She spoke briefly about school spirit and the importance of community. Michael barely listened. But then she paused, a slight smile playing on her lips. "Today," she announced, "we have a very special guest who wants to speak to you all about courage and standing up for what's right." The students murmured, curious. Who could it be? A local politician? A motivational speaker? Suddenly, a figure emerged from a side door onto the stage. The gymnasium erupted. It was John Cena. The shock and excitement were immediate and deafening. Kids jumped to their feet, cheering, yelling his name. Michael, for the first time that day, looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief. He rubbed them, thinking he was imagining things. But no, it was him. The man he had begged to be his dad, standing right there on his school stage. Cena raised a hand, a calm smile on his face, waiting for the noise to subside. When it did, he began to speak, his voice clear and strong. He didn't start with wrestling or fame. He spoke generally about the importance of kindness, resilience, and looking out for one another. "Every single one of you," he said, looking around the room, "has the power to be a hero. Not just in a big way, but in the small choices you make every day. Choosing to be kind, choosing to stand up for someone who needs it, choosing to never give up on yourself." Then Cena shifted his gaze, his eyes sweeping the room until they found Michael. He didn't point, didn't call out his name, but his words became more focused, more personal. "I recently met a brave young man," Cena continued, his voice soft but firm, "who showed me what true courage looks like. He faced some tough stuff, and he asked for help. That takes real strength. He reminded me that it's okay to struggle, but it's never okay to give up, and it's never okay to think you're alone." Michael felt a strange prickle behind his eyes. He knew, somehow, Cena was talking about him. The black eye reference wasn't explicit, but the message was clear. It was about his plea, his struggle, his hope. Just as the students were starting to wonder what was going on, Cena took a step back. "But I didn't come alone today," he announced, his voice booming, because when someone shows that kind of courage, they deserve to know they're not just supported by one person. They're supported by an entire community. They're supported by an army of champions. And then, the side doors to the gymnasium burst open. One by one, or in small groups, they walked out. Roman Reigns, Becky Lynch, Seth Rollins, Charlotte Flair, Randy Orton, Drew McIntyre, Sasha Banks, AJ Styles, and many, many more. 19 other WWE superstars, all of them. The sheer number of them, the collective power and presence, was astounding. The students erupted again, this time in an even greater wave of cheers and disbelief. Their faces were a mixture of awe, excitement, and utter shock. Hands flew to mouths, eyes widened to saucers. This wasn't just a wrestler. This was an entire roster. The gymnasium was filled with an overwhelming joyous roar. Michael, still rooted to his seat, could only watch, his heart pounding in his chest, his world tilting on its axis. He had asked for a dad. He had gotten an army. Michael's mind raced, trying to process the impossible scene unfolding before him. His eyes, still slightly swollen from the previous day's injury, darted from John Cena to the endless stream of wrestling legends now filling the stage. He recognized every face, every iconic pose, every superstar. This wasn't a dream. It was real. Tears welled up, blurring his vision, but he didn't try to stop them. They were tears of disbelief, of awe, of something he hadn't felt in a very long time: hope. A small, shaky breath escaped his lips, a sound lost in the thunderous applause and cheers of his classmates. He felt a strange mixture of embarrassment and overwhelming gratitude. All these people, all this noise, all this for him? It felt too big, too much, yet utterly perfect. Cena, seeing Michael's reaction, offered a small, reassuring smile. He then stepped forward again, his voice cutting through the remaining buzz of excitement. "And you know what?" Cena continued, his gaze still fixed on Michael, but his words echoing throughout the gymnasium. "When you're brave enough to ask for help, when you show that kind of courage, you deserve to know that you're not alone. You deserve to know that there are people who care, people who will stand up for you, people who believe in you." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Michael," he said, his voice softening, "you showed me what it means to be truly strong. And you reminded us all that sometimes the biggest battles are fought not in a ring, but in our hearts and in our homes." The mention of his name, spoken by John Cena in front of his entire school, sent a jolt through Michael. He felt every eye on him, but this time, it wasn't the usual stares of pity or judgment. It felt different, like warmth. It felt like they were seeing him, really seeing him, for the first time. He wiped a tear from his cheek with the back of his hand, a small, involuntary gesture. Then, one by one, the other superstars began to speak. Becky Lynch, her voice strong and clear, stepped forward. "Life can be tough, kid," she said, looking directly at Michael. "It can knock you down. But the most important thing is getting back up and knowing you don't have to do it alone." Roman Reigns, usually stoic, offered a soft but firm message. "We all stumble. We all need a hand sometimes. Don't ever be afraid to reach out." Seth Rollins, with a genuine smile, added, "You've got more strength inside you than you know. Keep fighting. Keep believing." Charlotte Flair, elegant and powerful, spoke about finding your voice and never letting anyone dim your light. Randy Orton, known for his intensity, simply nodded and said, "You're a warrior, kid. Don't forget that." Each message, though brief, carried immense weight. They weren't just generic encouragements. They were clearly tailored, subtly, to Michael's unspoken struggles. They spoke of resilience, of inner strength, of overcoming adversity, of finding support. It was a collective embrace. Not just from Cena, but from every single one of these larger-than-life figures. They formed a loose semicircle on the stage, their presence a powerful visual of solidarity, a wall of champions standing with him. Michael felt a warmth spread through his chest, a feeling he hadn't known was possible. The other students, initially just excited to see their idols, slowly started to grasp the deeper meaning of the visit. The murmurs died down, replaced by a quiet respect. They saw the tears in Michael's eyes, the way the superstars were looking at him, and they understood. This wasn't just a show. It was something profound. It was about one of their own, someone they might have overlooked or even teased, being acknowledged and uplifted by heroes. A few students, who had sometimes been less than kind to Michael, shifted uncomfortably in their seats, a dawning understanding on their faces. Empathy, a rare commodity in school hallways, began to spread through the room. Michael remained largely silent, his throat tight with emotion. He couldn't speak, couldn't form words, but his eyes, wide and shining, conveyed everything. The small, hopeful smile that finally touched his lips, despite the tears still tracing paths down his cheeks, spoke volumes. It was a smile of relief, of validation, of finally feeling seen. He had asked for a dad, and in that moment, he had received an army of champions, all united in their message. You are not alone. You matter, and we are here for you. The weight he had carried for so long, the burden of his secret struggles, felt a little lighter, as if the collective strength of 20 WWE superstars had momentarily lifted it from his shoulders. His world, which had often felt small and dark, suddenly opened up, filled with light and possibility. After the roar of the assembly finally died down, and the last autograph was reluctantly signed to the clamoring students, a different kind of quiet settled over the school. John Cena, with a gentle hand on Michael's shoulder, steered him away from the throng, towards a small, empty classroom. A few trusted wrestlers, carefully chosen for their calm demeanor and genuine compassion, followed at a respectful distance. This was the moment for a private conversation, away from the cameras and the excited chatter. Inside the quiet room, Michael sat across from Cena, his eyes still a little red, but a new, quiet wonder in them. Cena knelt down, putting himself at Michael's eye level. "Michael," he began, his voice soft but firm. "What you asked me for, back then, I took it seriously. And I want you to know, we're not going anywhere. This isn't just a one-time visit." Michael just nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement, but it conveyed understanding. Cena then introduced him to the others in the room. Becky Lynch, whose earlier words had resonated deeply, and Roman Reigns, whose quiet strength was a comfort. They spoke to Michael not as a victim, but as a young man who had shown incredible courage. Becky talked about a scholarship fund set up quietly just for Michael to ensure he could pursue any education he wanted without financial worry. Roman spoke about connecting him with a local mentorship program, a place where he could find guidance and support from men who genuinely cared, men who had faced their own struggles and come out stronger. It wasn't about replacing his family, they made clear, but about building a network of support around him, a safety net he'd never had. They also promised to check in, sometimes with a call, sometimes with a video message, just to see how he was doing. It was a commitment, not a fleeting gesture. The school, initially hesitant and focused on rules, had been profoundly affected by the day's events. The principal, seeing Michael's quiet transformation, understood the depth of his need. The school administration, previously bound by protocols, started looking at things differently. They began implementing new measures, not just for Michael, but for all students who might be struggling in silence. A new system was put in place for teachers to report concerns about a student's well-being more effectively. and a dedicated counselor was assigned to work closely with students showing signs of distress. Michael's teachers, especially the one who had advocated for him, became even more vigilant, offering him extra support and understanding in class. The shift wasn't dramatic overnight, but a seed of change had been planted. The visit had shone a light on the hidden struggles within their own community. The story, though kept as quiet as possible by Sina in the school, still rippled through the community. Parents talked, students talked. It wasn't about the specific details of Michael's home life, but about the sheer act of kindness, the collective effort to help a child in need. It inspired some local community members to volunteer more, to look out for their neighbors, to offer help where they saw a need. A local youth center reported an increase in sign-ups for their after-school programs, as parents became more aware of the importance of safe, supportive environments for children. Michael's transformation wasn't instant, but it was steady and profound. In the weeks and months that followed, the black eyes stopped appearing. He started to carry himself differently, with a subtle new confidence. He still had his quiet moments, but he began to engage more in class, even raising his hand to answer questions. His grades, which had always been borderline, began to improve. He started joining a few school clubs, tentatively at first, then with more enthusiasm. He made new friends, kids who saw him not just as the boy who needed help, but as the boy who was brave, who had been chosen. The weight that had been on his shoulders for so long truly began to lift. The fear that had always been a constant companion slowly faded, replaced by a growing sense of security and belonging. He learned that reaching out, truly reaching out, could change everything. For John Cena, the experience was a powerful reminder of why he did what he did. Reflecting on Michael's simple, desperate plea, he realized the true meaning of being a champion wasn't just about winning titles or selling merchandise. It was about using his platform, his strength, and his network to protect the vulnerable, to give a voice to the voiceless. He understood that the greatest victories often happened outside the ring, in quiet moments of profound human connection. Michael's courage, his raw honesty, had affected Cena deeply, solidifying his belief in the power of compassion. He often thought about Michael, wondering how he was doing, knowing that the seed of hope they had planted was growing. The image of Michael's small, hopeful smile, despite the tears, stayed with him, a constant reminder of the incredible impact a simple act of caring could have. The boy with the black eye had taught him that true strength lay not just in physical power, but in the willingness to stand up for someone else. Years later, the small town that had once been the backdrop for Michael's silent struggles now bustled with a different kind of energy. Michael, no longer the quiet, withdrawn boy with the recurring black eye, was a young man of 22. He stood tall, his shoulders broad, a confident smile often playing on his lips. He was in his final year of college, studying social work, a path he felt deeply called to. The old house, the one filled with so much sadness, was long behind him. He lived in a small apartment near campus, a space he had carefully made his own, filled with books, a few framed photos, and a quiet sense of peace. The mentorship and support from John Cena and the broader wrestling community had remained a constant, unwavering force in his life. It wasn't a formal, weekly check-in, but more like an invisible safety net that he knew was always there. Cena, true to his word, had quietly ensured Michael had access to resources for his education, for therapy when he needed it, and for opportunities he might not have otherwise found. There were occasional messages, sometimes a call, especially around his birthdays or major milestones. It was a unique relationship built on a single, desperate plea, and it had blossomed into a profound, lifelong connection. Michael knew he wasn't alone, and that knowledge had powered him through every challenge. Michael often thought back to that day in the school assembly. He remembered the shock, the disbelief, the overwhelming wave of emotion that had washed over him. He remembered Sina's words, spoken with such genuine care, and the sea of powerful, kind faces that had looked at him with understanding. It was the day his world had shifted on its axis, the day he understood that he mattered. Now, as a young adult, he could articulate the gratitude that had once been too big for words. He understood the immense courage it took for those men and women, heroes to so many, to step into his small, painful world and make such a profound difference. Their presence had not just saved him from a difficult situation. It had shown him what true strength looked like, what true compassion meant. He wasn't content to just live his own changed life. Michael was now actively involved in paying it forward. During his college breaks, he volunteered at a local youth shelter, mentoring kids who were going through tough times, many of whom carried their own hidden scars. He listened to them, truly listened, just as Sina had listened to him. He shared parts of his story, not for sympathy, but to show them that hope existed, that change was possible, and that they were not alone. He helped them navigate school, connect with resources, and most importantly, he offered them a consistent, caring presence. He saw himself in their eyes, and he remembered the transformative power of someone simply showing up. The story of the boy with the black eye and the 20 wrestlers who showed up became a powerful anecdote, one that Sina and other wrestlers would sometimes share in interviews, always careful to protect Michael's identity, but emphasizing the impact of a child's plea. It became a testament to the wrestling community's heart, inspiring empathy and action in countless fans who heard the tale. It was a story of hope, resilience, and the unexpected places kindness can be found. The plea, "Please be my dad," had been so much more than a request for a literal father figure. It had been a cry for safety, for protection, for guidance, for someone to believe in him. And while John Cena didn't become his legal father, he, along with the entire collective of wrestlers, had provided all of that and more. They had given him the unwavering support, the steadfast protection, and the gentle guidance that truly fulfilled that desperate, whispered wish. They had shown him what a loving, supportive family felt like, even if it was unconventional. The story closed on the idea that true championship extended far beyond the wrestling ring. It wasn't about the flashy moves or the roaring crowds, but about the profound acts of compassion, the quiet moments of deep human connection, and the unwavering willingness to stand up for those who cannot stand for themselves. Michael's journey, from a vulnerable boy with a black eye to a compassionate young man dedicated to helping others, was a living testament to the power of a champion's heart, a heart that beat not just for victory, but for humanity.